Right. Really pleased to be interviewing Anna Nibbs from Sheffield University of Sheffield today. And this is the first plodcast, whatever you want to call it, for the Autism Dialogue work that I'm doing, where I've actually been physically present with my interviewee, and it's a pleasure to be interviewing Anna in Sheffield today, here in the university where I'm a student on the Masters Coaching and Mentoring at Hallam. And you're just talking to me about relaxing.
So I've had a really hectic morning. I've been, as part of my job, working within enterprise education, I've had a morning of listening to student pitch presentations in mechanical engineering. Right. Brilliant, exciting, my area of interest, but obviously been full on. Had very little downtime, so I hot-footed it over here. Yeah. And one of the things I often forget to do is to try and centre myself and actually make my own transitions between activities, which I do need to do. Yeah. So I thought, while you were out getting a cup of tea, I thought, right, okay, let's just get myself centred. So, have you heard of the 3-step breathing?
Well, I used to, when I was a kid, I learned some kind of pranayama stuff where it's 9 actually. It's
right.
9 in, 9 hold, and 9 out, and then.
Yeah. Well, this is a variation, so it's basically a quick thing. So
a bit quicker than 9, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just breathing in for 5, a count of 5. Yeah. Sort of 5 seconds broadly, or possibly slower. Yeah. Holding for the same amount of time for 5, and then breathing out for 5.
Brilliant.
And actually, it's just a really simple mechanism for quickly getting.
I'm sensing that now.
There's another one as well, which is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 senses. Okay. So, as you're walking around, first of all, you identify and try and name 5 things you can hear. Then 4 things you can see. 3 things you can feel, sort of physically, touch, sensations. 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And that can even be the saliva or just the taste in your mouth. Yeah. And again, that's another way of just
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. That's really cool. I think I heard that long ago, but it's really cool. I'd love to. It's
often bandied around for sort of anxiety, just calming down at a really sort of peak, little acute sort of moment of anxiety. It's quite a good way of bringing it back.
And of course, stress and anxiety is the 21st century.
Yes.
Yeah, it's we live in such a stressful environment. In here in big towns especially, and it's really important. Goes right through to culture that we live in. We forget we're human because we're surrounded by artificial materials and machinery, and so I really appreciate that, because I hadn't done my presence in today. And it's take for granted. It creeps in, doesn't it?
It does.
That
it
stress.
Does. And I mean, I'm a big anxiety sufferer. I'm quite open about it. I'm quite open about my autism, my various ways in which I diverge from the norm, but whatever the norm is. But if it exists even. But anxiety is a huge one for me. Yeah. So actually, I have this little toolkit, and often I forget to use it. So I need to remind myself of what's there, what I already have at my disposal. I can just tap into when I need to. Yeah,
okay, so that is that like down the stimming thing?
Stimming, I mean, this is an interesting thing as a late diagnosed person. So I was diagnosed as autistic in 2016, so just coming up to 3 years ago. I was diagnosed with ADHD last year, in 2018, and I'm continually astonished by how little I know about my own needs, and how I sort of went through most of my life not even knowing that I had needs that I needed to address. So there's a toolkit there for the mental health side of things, but also, yes, the stimming thing, and I am a huge stimmer. I am much more open in stimming than many people.
I think I've underestimated its value.
Yeah.
Actually. And so it's a great thing to be able to be playing with and exploring and discovering, but there's always that, obviously, the stigma around repetition of movement or whatever.
And anything that's seen as erratic or because even repetitive movements can appear erratic to somebody else because they're outside, they deviate from what is perceived as acceptable.
Yeah. It's quite an interesting phenomenon in itself because you don't have to be autistic to do self-stimulatory practices. Doodling, people do it, it's part of life, and I think autistic people are more inclined to embrace the values of it because of needs, but also, hopefully because it's improving quality of life.
Well, I mean, it's just, I'll show just... Here is my stim bag, which you'll have seen from the dialogue sessions. So,
and we're going to talk about those in a bit.
Yeah,
but awesome.
I have a lot of varied of stimming toys. This is a very heavy-weighted steel object, which is kind of nice to.
It's like about a 2-inch ball bearing that's not round. It looks like it's been shaped by human fingers.
It's actually a seed. Shape of a seed,
nice.
And it came from an equity and diversity course that I went on called Seed.
Cool.
All the participants got given them, and it just has a nice weight to it.
Yeah.
But
good for proprioception.
Absolutely, which is one of my biggest needs. Is I really struggle to feel my body in space, and to actually, and I need to move a lot. So. Yeah. Lots of people know that I have this, and actually, more recently, I moved offices in just before Christmas after a restructure, and people are kind of aware that I have some of these things. And actually, sometimes I might be playing with something, and somebody will go, "Oh, that's really interesting," and I'll be like, "Hey, do you want to have a look at some other stuff?" And some of these are neurotypical people, and they'll be like, "Oh, that feels really nice." Oh, and I suppose I'm in a really privileged position because I work in a university. Yes, it's not perfect in terms of inclusion and accessibility and inclusive workspaces, but it's learning. But I work among colleagues who are generally quite accepting. They don't always get things right, but they're willing to learn. So I'm not completely able to be myself. If I was, people would be freaked out. But actually, I have a lot of privilege in being able to somewhat drop the mask compared to other people. And I think also the fact I'm white, the fact I'm middle class, the fact I'm highly educated probably makes it a lot easier.
Do you want to say a bit about your role? Because I'm interested in, obviously we've done a little bit of work in enterprise training.
Yes.
And we were talking just before we started recording about overlaps with coaching and mentoring.
Yes, that's right.
And I've got an interest also in enterprise because sometime we were talking last year about whether autistic people are possibly more inclined towards like an autonomous enterprising mindset. Is that true? And I mean, sorry,
it's a really interesting. No, it's absolutely. I suppose I'll just give a bit of context about the work that I do. So, and it's a bit of a strange one because I've just come out of a restructure. So, I've been working in enterprise education since 2010. So. Okay, my background, I did an undergraduate degree in English, Language and Literature I graduated in 2001, way back when. Worked in student support at this university for 5 years in a completely inappropriate role for an autistic person with the amount of face-to-face interactions I had.
I hope that's not too much of a scar on the life.
Oh, it's not, no, because actually some of the work I did spiked my interest in information management and educational technologies, which I then went back to university, did a master's as a mature student in information management, and started getting into educational innovation. So I'm more than an enterprise nerd, I'm a learning and teaching nerd. I'm fascinated by how people learn, how teaching works, fascinated by I love teaching. I've done quite a bit of it myself. And so I just fell accidentally into the enterprise role.
That's nice to get an accidental falling into a job.
Well, actually, that came out of another restructure and a redeployment, and it was a gamble because at the time it was a part-time fixed-term role. But I thought, actually, this looks more interesting than some of the other redeployment roles that were just the same thing I'd done before. And I thought, actually, you know what, I'll give it a punt. And it's given me 9 years of fascination, really in-depth immersion in something that I really enjoy.
So supporting students?
Yeah, supporting students, but supporting academics with their own teaching to bring enterprise skills and capabilities into their subjects.
Cool.
Which means I've worked with medics, I've worked with musicians, archaeologists, historians, dentists.
Wow.
I was working with, the thing I was doing this morning was with mechanical engineers. And I'm nosy, I'm naturally curious, and for me, discipline doesn't exist. I mean, partly, I'm a polymath. I was sort of an all-rounder at school and excelled at everything apart from PE, which just, I was rubbish at.
Yeah, sure.
And I struggle to...
I mean, I'm saying, yeah, sure, sorry.
It's all right.
Distracted me because you know, when our school day is always controversial for everyone.
Yeah.
But I'm still in shock about it. I'm just going to tell you this tiny little story.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I've been questioning about my ADHD, and at school I was one of the naughtiest kids.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah.
And I was a top of English.
Yeah.
An old school friend reminded me recently. At a big school, 200 in each year, and I was at the top.
Yeah.
But I dug out an old report the other day, and my PE teacher just wrote basically a lazy person.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't get away with that now.
No, you wouldn't. But I was
identifying with that.
Yeah. I mean, I was considered sort of academically gifted. I could draw people with articulated limbs and 5 fingers on each hand and all the correct facial features by the time I was 3.
Cool.
The academic side of school I found really easy up until GCSEs, and then as you start to have to get more demands placed on you, both in terms of the personal side, puberty, the mental health stuff, the social stuff, and actually you realise you can't just rely on your intellect, you actually have to do some work. That's when the problems started to kick in. And I also have ADHD.
Yeah.
But I was never a naughty kid. I wasn't even specifically a daydreamer. Yeah. My ADHD, and I am both the inattentive and hyperactive impulsive, and I'm at the top end of both.
Right.
And yet it's all internal.
Yeah, sure.
And people who know me and people who are familiar with neurodiversity and with autism and specific learning difficulties tend to be able to sense straight away that I'm probably an ADHDer as well as an autist.
Yeah.
But it's not very apparent to a lot of other people.
Yeah. Okay.
How's
that affecting things at work then? I mean, so you're in this department, and I know a little bit about the reasonable adjustments.
Yeah.
I've seen a lovely picture of your desk. I don't know if you've still got that desk, but it almost looks like a little psychedelic cavern of toys and things to keep you.
It's a bit different now because I'm now in an open plan office, which is fun and games, but actually, in a funny sort of way, it's not as challenging in some ways as my old place, because actually, although we had fewer people in our office, we were in much closer proximity. Yeah. And actually, the fact it's big and spacious with lots of people in, actually, it doesn't cause as many issues as I thought it was. But I have the light removed from above my desk. Yeah. I have lots of plants. I've started putting lots of stuff on the walls. I have whiteboard sheets, which are fixed by friction to the walls, which I can then write on the walls, because I like using that for jotting down ideas.
Oh, that sounds great.
And I have more STEM toys just sat out on my desk, and I've got a very high desk as well, so I can actually stand up and work sometimes.
I think I need to see a picture of this one.
Yeah.
Can you update it on?
I will. And one thing I've been And a lot of this came out of it all evolved over a period of time, because actually I started getting some of these adjustments before I even thought about autism.
Yeah.
Just because I had a really clued up manager who thought, hang on, some of these issues are not a disciplinary thing, or Anna not working well or not behaving well. These are obviously an occupational health thing. Yeah. And her question was, what does this employee need in order to work well?
Yeah.
Regardless of the diagnosis or not,
yeah.
What does this person need in order to do their job?
Yeah.
And that really should be how everything should be, really.
Yeah.
But actually, in lots of places, you have to have that bit of paper that says you have a diagnosis in order to get anything. Yeah. So I've kind of been lucky, but I document everything because I'm always keeping in mind that I might be in a situation further down the line where I'm not so lucky. So, yeah.
So, in enterprise, in your role, you said a bit about your personal circumstances and working with all these interesting people. Yeah. I gather there's some work with autism going on at the university.
There is, right? Yes. I mean, that's a bit of a sideline.
Is it a sideline? Well, we don't want too many sidelines.
No. I have to be careful about, and particularly because I'm now in a department that's been restructured and my role has changed slightly. Okay. It's not quite so much focused on enterprise, although I do have that in my title. I do have little sidelines, and they do relate. One is actually working with Liz Mill, Dr. Liz Mill from Professor Liz Mill from the Department of Psychology on inclusive workplaces.
Oh, obviously we've got a common connection with Dialogue, because she started up Autism Dialogue.
Precisely. So that is now something that's developing. But although that's been a bit of a thing that I did when I was going through a restructure and there wasn't a lot of core work to do, it does feed into what I do, because one of the big priority areas that my team, I'm now in a team called the Learning and Teaching Enhancement team, one of the big priorities for the university is inclusive learning and teaching.
Right.
And actually, there are several members of our team who are disabled in one way or another, which is interesting in itself. Yeah. I think there are a lot of people who work in learning and teaching development who are non-academics who actually think somewhat divergently anyway. I get that impression from... because it's kind of a geeky area to be in, and you don't get the sort of kudos and respect and that you would if you were an academic. We are somewhat vilified in some ways. Okay. But
that needs to change. That needs to be more
inclusive. Yes, yeah. But one of the interesting angles I have on it is the fact that there's a lot talked about inclusive learning and teaching and inclusive education. There's a long way to go with that kind of thing, and I'm very hot on it and very keen. I'm particularly interested in things around captioning in lectures and things like that, because but there were also just teaching practice more generally, and there were things I introduced into my own teaching when I was doing face-to-face teaching around clarity of information, giving information out in advance, providing information in a variety of formats, but also being more informal about promoting a culture of, if people needed adjustments or help, actually that being forthcoming as a thing. But one of the things I feel is often missing is a recognition that within institutions where you're trying to develop inclusivity for the service users or the learners, actually that also needs to feed into the people who are delivering that service. And sometimes that's forgotten about, that actually, as well as disabled students, there are an awful lot of disabled staff working within that institution, some of whom are working in very inaccessible work environments.
It's a cultural / systemic.
Yeah. And I think in order to... I was reading something interesting recently, and it was around organisational change, and it was about organisational user experience, and user experience is something that comes from software development and tech and game design, and the idea is that UX, as it's known for short, is about being user-centred in your design. But this guy that was writing about it was talking about the user experience of people working in an organisation, and how if the systems are poor and the experience of the workplace is poor, it saps energy and resources, which mean that there's less energy available to deliver a good service to the end user. And for me, as a disabled person and as an autistic person, I think that's a huge thing, because so much of our internal resources are sapped away before we've even got a chance to use them for the good that we want to bring into the world.
Exactly, and I think you've clinched it down. That it just we were talking right at the beginning, weren't we, about presence and humanity in workplaces, and I noticed an article this morning. Somebody sent me a link to something about mindfulness and compassion in the workplace. But you know, the instant response of seeing those words within the work context is fluffy, new age. Oh, you know, that's not going to work.
Airy-fairy, hippy-dippy.
So I stayed with it for a moment, and I read it, and I looked, and I admire. I can't remember what it was, but I really respect this kind of work that some of us are. Well, hopefully I'll be working in that field soon, but the way that you're bringing it into the culture.
I think for me, my frustration is that in a lot of workplaces, and it's a big issue in higher education, there's a lot of talk about health and well-being, but a lot of it is sticking plasters that don't address the systemic causes of low well-being, mental illness among students and staff. And you know, we have programs, staff well-being programs, student well-being programs, but hang on a minute, often the cause of that poor well-being is not even being looked at. And I think
it's not holistic, is it?
No.
It's symptomatic.
And that is
reactive.
Again, I mean, I think back to, you know, Dr. Luke Bearden's autism plus environment equals outcome. And actually, often the environment is just not even paid any heed to. So it's I chip away at these things, and I try and, as part of what I'm doing in my day to day, just bring in those conversations. And actually, it is becoming more normalised, particularly in my area of work, to talk about this sort of stuff.
Okay.
And I'd like to hope that I've kind of helped to further that a little bit. That might be being a bit presumptuous and arrogant, but
I don't think so, because if I've always believed the highest form of teaching is by example, and if you embody something that people respect, that's why they keep you in the job. You know, that's what you need as well. You know, we all need a job. And we need value in our role. So if it's a relational, relational thing, and we're lucky to be working in these cutting edge areas. And you said something about I'm doing the Masters Coaching and Mentoring. You said there's a bit of mentoring as well. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I mean, it's not very formalised at the moment. In my previous role, which is the more emphatically enterprise one that I was doing before the restructure, I was providing a lot of one-to-one guidance to academic staff on developing their teaching. And that did feel very much like a coaching sort of role, because I wasn't directly doing the same thing as them. But what I was doing was trying to tease out their needs and get them to identify what their needs are and explore what they were. But then to actually start to plan out ways that they could take those ideas and plans forward, and then I would go away and do some thinking, do some research, come back with information, but also support them with design and development. But also, I was doing that in some instances with teaching. I was doing tutorials with students, which is again a similar sort of thing when you're talking students through developing business ideas, business proposals, giving them feedback on assignments. So what I'm doing now, I'm not doing so much face-to-face stuff, because that kind of hasn't started yet. Our team is still working out what its remit is. But what I've got involved in more informally is mentoring other members of staff through a few mentoring programs. We have one for professional services staff called the GROW scheme, which is kind of sanctioned by HR, but it's independent of HR.
Does that stand for anything?
No, it's in capital letters, but it doesn't stand, and that bothers me because
it's interesting because GROW is one of the classical coaching models, isn't it?
Oh, maybe it comes
from John Whitmore, and it stands for goals, reality, options, and will.
Right, perhaps that's where that's come from, because it's all capitals. So I'm assuming it is an acronym.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah,
Check it out.
But so I'm mentoring a couple of people who are sort of more junior members of staff, professional services, who have had similar experiences professionally to how I was perhaps feeling professionally a few years back. So I'm a little bit further along, and and it is mentoring more than coaching really, because it's much more connected professionally in terms of the experiences are much more shared. And I'm also doing that with academic members of staff who are going for higher education academy, so HEA accreditation. I've got senior fellowship of the HEA, and so I've been buddying people through the application process for that. So partly they're kind of additional to my main role, but they're opportunities I can get involved in as a member of staff. But actually, I like people. I mean, one of the things that really struck me in my role in Hallam, I was in a very student-facing role, lots of unexpected demands, lots of face-to-face interaction, and I thought, oh my God, I'm not a people person. And it was only when I started getting involved in education and learning and teaching development that I thought, hang on a minute, I am completely a people person. It just depends on the setting and what my role is. And actually, when I'm in the right role, working with people, I need the downtime from it, but actually I feel somewhat bereft when I'm not connected with people.
Do you know, it's made me think of the term leadership, because that's coming into my sphere a bit at the moment. But it's more about quality, isn't it, that you embody? And it's not about like, I'm going to be in charge of this company one day, but that's kind of like the capitalist mindset that we're used to.
Well, it's this.
You don't have to be a leader. You don't have to actually like even be in charge of a bunch of people.
No, you don't. And there are different types of leader, and actually, some leaders are quiet and actually do things by example, and people naturally want to follow. Some leaders are in the throng.
It's just a funny old word. It is. Isn't it? Funny old world and a funny old word.
And I think people get confused between leadership and management.
Right.
And actually, you can be a manager and a leader at the same time, but the two are not the same. There is a Venn diagram, I think, of management and leadership.
Sure.
And probably a good manager probably has some element of the leadership in there.
A good manager can get themselves out of bed in the morning and get to work on time, or be able to manage a family, So it goes back to etymology again.
It is, and I think this is something I'm interested in at the moment, and it's something I kind of don't want to say too much about because I'm.
Well, we're probably coming to an end of our little session. Tell me what you're thinking, and shall we have a little chat about dialogue?
I mean, one of the things I'm interested in is the sort of skills and capabilities that disabled people more generally, but autistic people have, that are being used in ways, or often just entirely just to survive and to keep safe or to protect or look after others in the community.
I know where you're going with this,
and therefore are not being recognised as something that they're using professionally. Things like advocacy, mentoring and coaching, collaboration. Autistic people are supposed to not be able to do teamwork, and yet you see online the networking, the collaboration, the joint group projects often managed with so limited resources. And if that isn't teamwork, I don't know what it is. And actually a lot of this stuff is invisible and is not acknowledged for the high-level skilled work that it is.
Exactly, and when I was working at a disability Sheffield a couple of years ago, one thing that really, as a research worker with disabilities and employment, and one thing that really jumped out at me was actually disabled people have to face challenges. So
they have to problem solve. They have to be creative.
So they're naturally more qualified for certain roles. Than a non-disabled person, but it's the stigma, isn't it?
And yet, actually, I think as well, because many workplace practices are not inclusive and not accessible, those skills are being sapped away because they're being used just to enable that person to get by. And this is the thing about organisational user experience. Actually. So
this could be a pretty long conversation. Maybe we could pick it up another time. I love the way that our conversation's flowing, but we're bound by walls and time and space and everything. And the listeners, obviously, they might not be that interested, although we are. And I don't really want to guide the conversation off.
No.
So we've got a few minutes. Would it be alright to talk a little bit about dialogue?
Yeah,
because this
happy
is
to.
my special interest.
Yeah.
And is it alright to say that?
Sure.
That you've been a participant since quite near the beginning.
Yes.
Is there anything that obviously jumps out for you with that? So is there anything personally and professionally that's linking?
I think for me, one of the things that's interesting.
Should we say a bit about what it is for?
Yeah. Would you like to do that, because you're better qualified to explain?
Yeah. So if you've not come across Autism Dialogue before, it's a technique that we started up in Sheffield a couple of years ago, and it comes from Professor David Bohm, who created this method with his colleagues of dialogue. I won't go into the fact that he was a quantum scientist, but that is something worth looking at. But the point is about the way people communicate and think together. So it's a specific technique of group communication with no agenda, and some very simple practices. And what I realised is that it could be applied to the autism field because of the fragmented nature of all the different views of autism, and the fact that in the middle autism actually means self. It's from the word self. So I just had to get a load of people with different experiences and views together a couple of years ago with Professor Liz Milner, who we mentioned. And you've been there since near the beginning, and it's still going pretty strong.
It is, and it's. I sort of came to it with pretty much no clue what the hell was going to go on, and I think, and that's kind of
what I love about it.
And it's a really weird thing for me because I struggle with a lot with uncertainty, and I've had a lot of uncertainty over the past few years. I'm getting better at sitting with it now than I was, but I'd say one of the things that I'm struck by with dialogue is that it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
What I've been interested in is the fact that some people come to it saying, well, I'd like to be able to actually talk more and be more comfortable with talking. For me, I have no problem with talking. I could just yabber on for hours. My problem is listening. And I need to do a lot of listening. I'm a parent as well. I'm a wife. I do need to do a lot of listening work. I'm now line managing someone for the first time. And actually, one of the things I find hardest about dialogue, but probably most useful to me, is the chance to practice listening and to practice actually taking in and digesting things.
There's something about listening to your own
reactions. Yeah, it is. Well. Yeah, I do have this impulsive streak. It's a very ADHD thing. As a child, I used to be the kid that put the hands up all the time, and sometimes I could almost feel myself internally going, "No, don't put your hand up," and it would just come up, and I would say something.
So, do you think there's a slight therapeutic angle?
I think there is.
Not to put a label on.
No, I think part of me, it sounds a really horrible way of describing it, but part of it is sort of managing certain facets of my neurodivergence and how my brain works. And it sounds kind of has sort of negative connotations in terms of the fact I might be checking and editing myself and so on. That's not really what I mean. It's more about learning to be comfortable with different forms of communication, and we have to deal with a lot of communication that we don't get, and there are a lot of parameters, a lot of schemas, a lot of things that are just not apparent to us, and I've come across this all the time. But I think my compulsion and my impulsivity about putting my hand up or just butting in and speaking, yes, on the face of it that might seem like the most comfortable thing to do, but actually sometimes it just embarrasses me or makes me say something that I regret. So actually finding a way to learn to manage that for my own well-being, not to sort of censor myself, but to actually say, hang on a minute, be comfortable with not saying so much.
And finding a deeper sense of
Yeah,
self.
I think so.
Because society is impulsive.
Yes,
and dialogue isn't just applied in the autism field.
No, it's not.
It's used in organisations.
It's used informally. It's
a way of being, isn't it?
Yeah.
But from the United Nations all the way down, the founders of the academy are working with the American government. They're working with big topics, but it comes all the way down to the individual sense of self.
Yeah, so I think there is a therapeutic angle. I mean, one of the biggest things for me that's not really a therapeutic thing is just being with other autistic people. And people who are not autistic but who are really sensitive and respectful and engage with autistic people, and that's a joy to behold as well. But
or who aren't and haven't had the chance to sit with autistic people.
That's right, and actually who are willing to start that and to. But one of the things again, I sort of talked about, being a polymath and being interested in everything. It's partly being, and partly to do with my ADHD and my kind of, this is interesting, this is interesting, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not as able, because I work full time and I have small children, to spend as much time with other autistics as I would like to.
Right.
I get very envious when I see people going off to conferences or like retreats with other. I'm like, I would love to be there, but I have a family.
Yeah, well, we should make more things happen in Sheffield.
Yes, absolutely.
The region.
Yeah, but I'm finding increasingly that more and more autistics are coming out of the woodwork in Sheffield, and I'm finding them
everywhere. Oh, good. Good.
Quite informally and just serendipitously through. Right. And that's lovely.
That is, isn't it? And there's actually, I've got to bring science back into it again, because we're both in university. And, but there's been some groundbreaking research in the way autistic people communicate.
Yes, I've been looking at that, and it's pleasing to see, actually.
Yeah, it is, because there's this whole argument about the neurodiversity movement and Stevie, my mate, was talking about it the other day, the way that neurodiversity movement is getting a lot of slating because at one extreme it's being called just a difference, acceptance and everything. But it's not, because in the middle there were actually disabled people in many respects, and so the medical model and the social model are there hanging in the air saying, I forgot what I was going to say then. My thread went.
Was it around? Oh gosh, I can't remember.
It's just it's the reparation that we need to do since Canna's legacy of the whole pathologizing of people who are different, but actually there's no room for focusing on strength-based stuff. No.
And this is,
we need to turn that.
We do,
that's called shift.
But I don't see any conflict in embracing neurodiversity and recognising autism as, for many of us, a disability. Not everyone considers it a disability for them. Personally, I have no problem at all with calling myself disabled as an autistic person. I am multiply disabled, but actually I have no conflict there. I still embrace neurodiversity. Personally,
I'm nerdy about this, because I say, well, if my environment's disabling, I'm disabled, but if it's not, then I'm not disabled.
See,
it's a tree in the forest thing. But
it is, but I struggle to think of an environment where I would completely be free of impairment.
Sure.
That's me personally.
Sure.
There are certain angles to things like my working memory and some stuff that would be annoying. Even if my environment were perfect, they would still be impairments. So for the most part, for me that doesn't even conflict with the social model of disability. Actually, it doesn't. People say that if you take away the environmental, then the disability isn't there. Well, actually, that's not entirely what the social model says.
Okay.
Right. It's more nuanced than that, and one thing that gets me, I can be black and white on some things,
Yeah.
but things like politics and things like the social model of disability and neurodiversity, I get really exasperated when people lack nuance in their thinking. I'm like, I'm the one who's supposed to be really black and white here, but hang on a minute, I can see some things from this area, things from this area.
Yeah.
It's not that clear cut.
Yeah.
And
What's made us, I don't know if this is exactly directly related, and we will have to wrap up in a minute. But I know people who consider themselves on the autistic spectrum.
Yeah.
But they've no reason to come out. They don't feel a reason to come out.
No.
They don't feel a reason even to use a label.
No.
So this black and white thinking, it actually has helped them decide that they don't need the construct of black and white thinking.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can find myself going down.
No, I mean, for me, I have been able to mask more or less successfully for 36 years. I'm now 39. At great cost to my mental health.
Yeah.
And actually in my professional development in many ways. I can do it. I can mask, but actually, I do so less now than a lot of people I know, and I would not want to work somewhere where I were not able to disclose and actually present some of that openly, because actually, whilst that might keep me in the job, it wouldn't keep me in the job for long, because I'd probably end up going off sick with stress. So for me, yes, I'm privileged now at being able to drop that mask, very privileged, but actually sometimes that mask keeps me safe, but actually in other places dropping the mask keeps me safe. And I'm actually lucky that I can choose. Well, I say choose, it's not always a choice, but I can consciously decide whether it's wise or not to.
It's very important to count our blessings, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm hugely fortunate in that. And whilst I'd say I'm a disabled person, and I'm very emphatically a disabled autistic person, I'm also a comparatively privileged, fortunate and happy one.
Brilliant.
So
wow, what a wonderful note to end on, Anna. Is there anything else you want to mention?
No,
I
don't think so. I think
cool.
It's just been a nice conversation, and I hope it's not been too rambly, and I hope it's been interesting.
Oh, I do. I hope it's been really rambly.
Yeah. Well, I like rambly conversations.
Yeah, better than most things on TV.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, go well, and take care. Cheers.
You too.